Joker 2, Folie Deux. Very clever, Todd. I saw this movie a couple days ago, and I want to talk about it, so we're going to talk about it, I guess. I wasn't a big fan of the first Joker movie. I didn't think it had much to say, despite pretending like it did. It's a very good-looking movie visually, but other than that, I just really couldn't glean that much from it. It's depressing, almost to an unrealistic extent, where everybody in the world of Joker is a horrible monster, and it just kind of strains credulity. I couldn't really empathize with Arthur Fleck as a character because everything he goes through is so over-dramatic and unrealistic. It's very baseline when it comes to its portrayal of mental illness and societal woes, and it kind of beats you over the head with its themes to the point where it's like, I get it. I know what you're trying to say.
I get what you're trying to say, Todd.
But this movie, this sequel, Joker 2, Electric Boogaloo, it broke me. So first things first, despite what Todd and everyone else would have you believe, yes, this is a musical, which is actually what interested me about this project the most. The first Joker is this, like, self-serious, really uber depressing drama. And then the sequel comes around 5 years later and it's like, I don't know, musical, I guess. Yes! And it's really not as jarring or weird as you might think, but that's almost kind of the problem. This movie doesn't commit fully to being a musical, so you end up with songs that are either like fake and in the character's head that don't contribute anything, or when they are sung diegetically in the context of the movie, they're like bad on purpose. This movie is 2.5 hours long, and believe me when I tell you, you feel every minute. They really could have cut down at least a half hour by trimming some of these superfluous songs, because they really don't contribute that much. Aside from some notable exceptions, most of the songs are completely pointless. In terms of plot, this movie doesn't really have a lot of that. I kind of kept waiting the whole movie to see if Joker would like break out and begin the real movie, and then that never really happened. It's literally just him going to trial for his actions in the first film, and not much else. It's gaudy, and it's self-indulgent, and it's boring. But if you still want to see it, this is the time to click off the video. I'm going to talk about the end. I don't think Todd Phillips is a bad director. He has a lot of talent. So does Joaquin Phoenix. So does Lady Gaga. Everyone involved in this is talented, which is why I think that this movie is bad on purpose. It's a bit difficult to put into words, but watching this movie, I got this overwhelming sense that Todd Phillips hated the reaction to the first movie. Specifically, he hated how people felt about Arthur Fleck as a character. While the first movie does take strides to make you sympathize with Arthur, as he is the protagonist, I don't think the reaction was ever supposed to be what it turned out to be in the end, in that some people thought that he was completely justified for murdering 6 people. And it seems like this upset Dear Todd, because he goes about this movie trying to dismantle everything you like or empathize with about Arthur Fleck. And it's kind of brilliant. Like, Todd Phillips clearly hates that this movie has become like an incel rallying cry or whatever, alongside American Psycho and Fight Club as this movie that, like, sad, lonely people misinterpret to be about them. And then in the sequel, he systematically dismantles every redeemable quality about Joker, reveals him to be a sad, pathetic psychopath that deserves every amount of derision he's given in the first film and beyond, and then he kills him.
Well, let me ponder that one, Tado.
That's right. The movie literally ends with Joker getting prison shanked to death. If there was ever a more damning indictment of the character, I don't think you could get any more on the nose than that. Todd. The whole movie centers around the trial of Arthur Fleck, which is just an extremely literal way to get across the movie's key question. Arthur's defense attorney posits that Arthur, in fact, did not commit these crimes, and that he suffers from split personality disorder, that the Joker is a separate part of him that he cannot control. And then we meet Lady Gaga, Harley Quinn, who, like, Joker is in love with, and she kind of pretends to be in love with him, but really isn't, and is more, like, interested in the idea of Joker more than, like, Arthur Fleck as a person. She tells him to ignore his defense attorney's advice and go out on trial, like, as Joker and show the world that he's Joker. And the defense attorney is obviously like, this is a horrible idea, you're gonna turn everyone against you, blah, blah, blah. But he doesn't listen, mainly because he wants Lady Gaga's approval. So he goes out on trial as Joker, and he fires his defense attorney, and he does his own defense, and it's like this catastrophic failure of a defense. He makes a big fool of himself, And then the guards at the prison get so mad at him for, like, outing them on live TV, which he does, that they beat him up and then assault him in prison, which is, in my opinion, a very over-the-top and misplaced scene and probably shouldn't have been in there. I almost didn't really want to mention it, but it is kind of important because after they, do that to him, and then they also kill, like, one of his supporters that's in prison with him, he pulls, like, this complete 180, and he goes up for his final statement in court, and he just basically is candid with the jury and says that he doesn't want to be Joker anymore. He wants to move on and accept his punishment and move on with his life and maybe find something better on the other side, if that's even possible. But the jury doesn't take it. Like, they sentence him to death, like they were going to anyway. And then right as that's, like, happening, a bomb goes off outside the courthouse, and Joker escapes. And he goes to meet Harley Quinn, thinking that they're gonna, like, run off into the sunset together. But again, she doesn't love him because she's obsessed with that concept of him as the Joker, as that, like, force against society that he kind of was in the first one. And so she leaves him, she abandons him, and she tips off the cops to get him arrested again. And then that kind of leads to our last scene where he's walking down the halls. He's told he has a visitor, so he's walking to go meet whoever the visitor is. And then a fellow inmate who was kind of obsessed with him before, kind of in the background, shanks him to death. And it's implied that inmate is going to be, like, the real Joker because he starts kind of carving his face like the Heath Ledger Joker in The Dark Knight in the background while we watch Arthur die. And then that's the end of the movie. On the surface, it may not seem like this movie is that much different from the first Joker. They both feature the character of Arthur Fleck being treated in a fairly similar manner. But in the first Joker, Arthur getting beat up and treated like garbage and thrown around and abused by everyone in his life serves to emphasize the empowerment of his eventual transformation into the Joker. And again, I don't think this movie was ever condoning that behavior, but it is sort of an arc in the sense of we see Arthur at a low point, gaining power, and becoming, this psychotic killer, and becoming an icon, becoming famous in a strange way like he always wanted to. But Joker 2 takes very similar elements and sort of twists them around to be not so much about Arthur's empowerment, but quite the opposite, his depowerment. Every sensible person around Arthur is telling him not to address this Joker side of his person, to cop to the idea that Joker is a product of his mental illness, and because of that, he is not fit for the death sentence. But Arthur can't seem to let go of the 15 minutes of fame he had in the last movie. And with the encouragement of Harley Quinn, he tries to adopt that persona again to disastrous effects. And it becomes clear that the public perception of Joker is not how Arthur Fleck is as a real person. He isn't really a symbol of societal defiance. He's just a sad, lonely loser. And that's exactly what this film wants you to take away from it. I also think it's deeply ironic that the factor that trips up Arthur in the end and convinces him to basically destroy any chances of continuing his life is a woman. Love. The thing that he was always chasing in the first movie, but could only really fantasize because, again, he's a creepy, lonely loser. And I honestly didn't expect this sequel to be that, thoughtful in its portrayal of Joker and Harley's relationship. Instead, they use Harley Quinn as this sort of metaphor for Arthur's fan base, the outside world, and how they perceive him. And it's really just this false persona of the Joker that they've all concocted in their minds based on limited information. And then when Harley finds out who the real Arthur is, she wants nothing to do with him. And similarly, when the world finds out and when his fan base finds out that that's who he is, they also want nothing to do with him. And that's why the guy at the end kills him. And the reason I find it so interesting is because it's just literally a complete slap in the face to anyone who found the first Joker empowering or something to aspire to, which it's clear Todd Phillips never intended for that movie to be that way. Because then he made this to basically like slap the wrist of the audience and be like, here's how you're supposed to take it. And it's not good. Like, this movie is awful, don't get me wrong. It's super boring, and I wouldn't recommend watching it. But it is fascinating in the sense of I've never quite seen a sequel do something quite as blatant as this. And it's really for that reason that I genuinely enjoyed this one a little bit more than I enjoyed the first one. Not by much, and I don't really like either of them, but I do find this one more interesting as a case study. It has so much more kind of behind the scenes going on that I think is interesting to dissect, and that's why I wanted to make this video. I'm sorry it's kind of devolved into me ranting. The structure has kind of gone away, but hey, you know, we got there at the end, and I hope I made my point at least somewhat clear. So yeah, Joker 2, Folie Deux. Not great, but interesting. And hopefully you enjoyed me ranting about it for a period of time. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next one.
There's a light.